This is the IT Director's Playbook, the podcast where we sit down with IT directors, ed tech leaders, and industry experts to tackle real-world tech challenges, honest conversations, expert insights, practical takeaways. Let's dive in. Michelle Krieger, you have been a special ed teacher and IT director and the first data protection officer in New York.
That's
and you just gave the keynote at this TETA Summer Institute 2026. You did a great job. It was an excellent keynote. And thank you so much for sitting with us on this podcast today.
I'm going to enjoy it. I can tell already.
Probably none of our listeners know you personally. We're primarily in the Southeast, primarily K-12 tech directors. Tell us a little bit about your story and who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, as we've already heard, my name is Michelle Krieger, and I am currently the Data Protection Officer with Lakeshore Central School District, which is in Western New York. So that's the Buffalo side of the state, not the city side of the state. And so my career actually doesn't start in IT. It starts as a special education teacher, where I was a consultant teacher pushing into classrooms and helping teachers to differentiate instruction and testing and things like that for our special education students. My career actually follows the evolution of ed tech pretty well. In about 2014, when everybody was looking forward to getting devices into kids' hands and moving into the one-to-one initiatives, I jumped feet first into that. I was really excited about the technology getting into the hands of my special education students, as you can imagine, because special education students, those are the kids that don't always read well. They don't always write the best and things like that. And now you gave them a device, and for those that couldn't read, bam, they press a button on that device and the device is reading to them. And for the students that had great things in their head but don't really get that out on paper, you had the ability to press that button again and it was text to speech or speech to text. So that was great. And I did a really good job with that. My superintendent noticed and said, hey, I put one-to-one devices in all the kids' hands, and I'm realizing that maybe not all the teachers love that idea. You have been doing a really good job with it, so why don't we move you over to helping teachers with the technology and implementing technology into the curriculum. So it's not just technology for technology's sake, it's technology for purpose, right? So I became the educational innovator, fun title. Basically, I was a tech integration specialist. And it really compared to what I was doing anyway, so it wasn't a huge jump for me. I was pushing into classrooms helping special education students and teachers, but now I was just shifting the role from special ed to technology. So from there, in small districts, people wear many hats. My superintendent at the time was also the tech director, and she realized pretty quickly as one-to-one devices were in their hands that technology was booming and growing, and maybe she didn't have all the tools to work as in that position anymore. So I again got tapped on the shoulder, and they said, hey, can you be the tech director and kind of take some duties away from our superintendent? So I gladly did that. At the time, again, I was wearing many hats. I was the webmaster. I was in PR. I was also running community education for 2 districts, both my own and a neighboring district. And so I had a lot going on. In 2019, New York State did something. They got a new CPO, Louise DeCandia, and she said, hey, everyone, hi, I'm your new CPO. And by the way, in 2014, we passed something called Education Law 2D, which focuses on the data privacy of students and APPR data for teachers and principals, and no one's really paying attention to it. So knock, knock, I'm here, I'd like you to pay attention to it. In the law, it talks about how to protect the data, how you worked with vendors, the fact that every district in New York State needed to identify a data protection officer. And so like I said, I was in that role as tech director in Holland, but I had all those other roles. Well, my superintendent said to me, Michelle, this is going to be a very important job, and I'd like you to find out as much as you possibly can about it. So she took all those other things off my plate. No more community ed, no more webmaster. She took that all off my plate and said, go figure this out. And as I did that, I realized like I had a group of friends who were in the same position, because let me say again, I didn't mention this, but I did in the keynote this morning, but I'll say it again. This law was put into place and it was an unfunded mandate, which means, unfortunately, schools didn't get the money to bring in a professional to take on the duties of a data protection officer. So, unfortunately, for tech directors, the job was handed to them. And, you look at the job description of a tech director and you look at the job description of a DPO, you'll know that, unfortunately, they don't have a ton in common. And it's just kind of counterintuitive, because the idea that a tech director is also a DPO means that they're the checks and balances for themselves.
Yeah.
And so it's just a little bit of a funny situation. But such as it was an unfunded mandate, and schools had to make the decision of who was going to be the DPO and get the name to the state by 2020, January of 2020.
So it had been ignored basically for 6 years. Is what
I don't know if that's probably not good that I'm saying that, but that's the truth. That's the truth. Yeah, most definitely. So 2019 actually is when I started to talk with the CPO, Louise DeCandia, and ask her, like, what exactly is this going to look like in a school district? In New York State, we have something called regional information centers, and those people are very knowledgeable, and they have cybersecurity experts and things like that there at these regional centers. So I would go there and find out, how do we do this in a school district? And as I was gaining the information, I would turn around and tell my buds, all my friends, like, hey, did you know you have to do this when you're a DPO? And everybody like, nope, didn't know that, so let's go do that now. And that just kind of morphed into something that I run today, which is the Western New York DPO Cooperative. And I still do monthly meetings with anybody who's tuning in to that Google Meet, and we just talk about the work. So we talk about like what should be done as we start to evolve the position, because AI is coming and cyber threat landscape is a mess, and so a lot of things need to be paid attention to. So we just talk about the work. So that's me in a nutshell. I mean, that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at right now. I've been with Lakeshore Central School District as a DPO for 3 years now, and I've absolutely loved it.
A 911 call comes in from your school. Your dispatcher knows the address. The first responder still has to find the room. Most school 911 calls are medical. A seizure, a heart attack, a kid who needs help right now. The faster someone gets to that room, the better the outcome. That's what Alert is built for. The moment a call is placed,
911, what's your emergency?
Alert identifies the exact room and lights it up on your building's floor plan, right here in seconds. At the same time, Alert sends out notifications by email and by webhook to tools like Google Chat with the room, the building, and a link straight to the live floor plan. Your nurse, your front office, your security team, they all see the same thing at the same time. When it's resolved, the call gets logged and closed, so there's a record of exactly what happened and when. Alert, part of Ambit's full-stack life safety platform. One vendor, one platform. Request a demo at ambit-llc.com. Amazing. I'm just honestly... Well, first of all, I'm the only person who's not been a tech director in this room, so this is all kind of new to me, but the idea of data protection and a data protection officer is a foreign one to me. And it might be foreign to the IT directors in the southern states. Do you know of any other states that have done something like this and are now implementing DPO, or is it just New York?
Well, I have been to many states, and they're at the beginning stages of kind of where New York is. And I can tell you Tennessee, where we are today, is on the precipice of getting the same thing that we have in New York State, which is Education Law 2D. So yeah, it's coming. It's definitely coming. And I think that's a good thing. Like I don't ever want to scare the pants off anyone, but I think it's a good thing because you'll get the framework based on the law and the regulations to tell you how to play the game the right way, finally, because we need that. We need the framework to figure out how we're gonna do this.
Absolutely. And I mean, we talked a little bit about this off camera, but for Alabama and Mississippi, and we know Tennessee, it's right here. Like, how far away are we from the states doing, kind of following New York's lead? Mm-hmm. What do you think? Like,
I think
we don't know, but
I don't. If I had a crystal ball, I would tell you that I think it's close.
Mm-hmm.
Within a year would probably be. I know Tennessee's got a lot of legislation they're talking about right now, and I think this is on the horizon within a year to two.
Let me just step back and just ask you, what do you mean by data protection?
Yeah, great question, right? What I mean by data protection, specifically in Ed Law 2D, it says you have to protect student data. It should not be used for marketing purposes. It should not be used to feed the large language model. It should not be used for any other purpose than educational purpose. Mm-hmm. And we have to protect that. You know, we as school districts are the ones that put the devices in their hands. Mm-hmm. So we have the responsibility to make sure that we keep them safe, just like we keep them safe in our buildings. You know, we run fire drills, we do the different things to keep the kids safe. I feel like that's how we need to look at school safety now, is not just a physical safety thing, but it's also data protection and cybersecurity.
So are we talking about FERPA and COPA or more?
Yeah, it is more. I mean, this obviously Ed Law 2D and any laws that you get around data protection, there's going to be mingling of FERPA in there. Well, and I'll tell you, my position in the last 3 years kind of has morphed into just, I'd say a better title for me now after 3 years is probably a compliance officer, because I do take on things like FERPA complaints and things like that too. Okay. So yeah, they do intermingle and weave. You know, FERPA, great law, by the way. Can we talk about that?
Sure.
1974 is when it was introduced, I believe. I hope I have that right. I'm pretty sure I do. It's a year after I was born, so now you know how old I am. But very few amendments to that law, right? It just said you can't, without parent permission, give their children's information away and give people access to it. Really, Ed Law 2D just is the digital version of that, right? Yeah. So it is going to mingle with FERPA a little bit.
So what does it look like to you, kind of I know each day is a little bit different, but on a global, year look for you, what does it look like?
Yeah.
What are you dealing with in terms of the things that are putting student data at risk, maybe?
Yeah. Well, it's the people in the chairs in front of the screens at your organization, which is everyone.
Yes.
If there's so the number one thing is, the way I look at it is, if you have an email address connected to our domain, you are a part of the chain. And I certainly don't want you to be the weakest link breaking that chain. So I do a ton of training.
So every single employee?
Every single employee has to be touched.
Without exception?
Yeah, without exception. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a cafeteria staff that's actually a third party kind of. And what I require is for that service to provide to me how they were trained in data privacy. And if it doesn't meet the requirement that we hold, we train them ourselves. But they do a great job. So I'm training. And I don't, like you said, all staff, no exceptions, absolutely. But I do a lot of training in the classroom still too. Like I've said, the start of my career in education wasn't IT, it was in the classroom. So I'm very comfortable talking with our students about data privacy and security, and had some great opportunities this year to do exactly that. Librarians are the people who right now are kind of responsible for digital citizenship. So I give a shout out to the librarians, because they've taken that on. So they talk about digital citizen and things like that. What I've done is kind of leveled it up in our district and said, hey, librarians, you're doing an amazing job with getting some standards out in computer science and things like that. I'd love you to level up and talk about cybersecurity and data protection. And so I kind of partnered in my first year at Lakeshore. I partnered with the librarians and just kind of stayed with them for a few days and talked with the students the way I want them talking to students about data privacy and security. And, stayed with them for a year, and pretty much they've figured out how to do that lesson and that unit. And so I move on to other things. This year, I had the chance to talk to our finance academy, which was absolutely amazing. Talk to the kids about, getting their first job and things like that. I had an economics teacher reach out to me and say, I love that we have you here because I'd love for you to come in and talk with the kids about the economics of a breach for a school district. And it's been real fun. It's been really cool. I love the fact that I can still have access to the kids at some point because my heart is in teaching, and I like that a lot.
So it sounds like this role isn't just a techie type role.
It is not. It's
when you describe it, it's like it has data in it, so it has to go to the tech department. But really, it could be that it isn't the most strategic place to place that officer. There might be other people like yourselves who didn't come from the tech world, so to speak, that have gotten into it from a different angle, but can provide leadership.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I feel like the leadership in data privacy and security role comes from within. I had talked off camera about the problem that we have in education is, we'd love a professional cybersecurity expert to come into our school district, but we don't have $250,000 just laying around to pay this individual. Remember, unfunded mandate. So that's just the true heart of the fact, I just think that coming from an educational background versus an IT background has been super helpful for me actually in this job because I talked about it in my keynote. Like the tendency in IT is kind of just to say no. Can we use this software? No, it's not on our list. Can we go with this vendor? No. But with my background in education, I can kind of talk with teachers and say, the deal is that's a great tool, but we have this vendor over here who actually performs this same things that this product performs, and they have a great privacy policy, and they will agree to sign off with the SDPC or on your individual school's data privacy agreements, right? So it's just kind of, I decided to call our department, no more are we the department of no, we're the department of yes, but. Okay. And that but is to make sure that, vendors are vetted and we're using safe vendors that we know will take care of our students' data.
I know off camera we talked a little bit about AI and some of the concerns you have related to that and student data. Yeah,
sure. I think right now, right, we are a little bit in the Wild West of AI. And what I mean by that is when I am in different states and in conferences running sessions, I'll ask these 3 questions. The first question is, how many of you allow your staff and faculty to use AI? And all the hands go up in the room. And they're proud of themselves. Good for you. I'm proud of you too. I think, that's risk taker. Good for you. The next question doesn't go so well. I say, who has AI policy, right? And maybe not so many hands go up. That's not a great thing, right? And then here's the third question. Okay, maybe you don't have the policy in place yet. Maybe your board's not prepared to do that. But there are other ways. You don't necessarily need an AI policy. I'm glad I'm bringing this up. You can easily take on, AI in your district and write in your code of conduct or, write in your acceptable use policies the ways that maybe until you get policy, you want to head some problems off. So just wanted to throw that little nugget in there. And then the third question is, how many of you have framework about how to use it, right? And then everybody's like, what do you mean by framework? That's when I get scared. When I see no hands in the audience raised, that's, I guess, how I get scared. And the reason is because, and I say it's the Wild West because I fear that people are putting information into ChatGPT. What makes me even more scared is that we're using ChatGPT because how many districts actually pay for ChatGPT, the enterprise version? Probably not many, but a lot of people are using it. So I'm always telling districts, if you're a Microsoft district, you are Copilot. If you are a Google district, you are Gemini. That's what you should be using, especially if you have the Google for Workspace for Education Plus. That's the enterprise version. That's what you should be using. It's safer. The safest bet is if you bought another server and developed your own AI bot, right? But not everybody obviously can do that.
You had also mentioned about being concerned about applications.
Yeah, so this is a conversation that my district has had within our governance team is, let's say you aren't a school that adopted AI. You're still dealing with AI because
100%.
your vendors have incorporated AI into so much of their software. So we were saying the example of we bought Seesaw back in the day, and now Seesaw has this entire, AI platform. And, how does that change the game? And do I now need to go back and look at my data privacy agreement and see if anything else needs to be covered? How is the SDPC handling that and things like that? So these are just questions we kind of talked about in our governance meeting. Yeah.
So it's an ever-evolving landscape.
It is. Yeah, it's nothing you can ever put your finger on. Yeah, supersonic speed, scary stuff. And, also when you put the framework together too, what you're really doing for students and faculty, if they're allowed to use AI, is you're giving them that. I know a lot of people are going to be familiar with what I say, but it's a stoplight, right?
Yeah.
You start to put guardrails in on where you cannot use AI, where AI is okay to use under certain parameters, and then where it's like the green light, just go for it, do what you want to do with AI. It helps students and teachers, when you tell them where they can and cannot use AI. So,
It's a gray area in so many areas, and you're getting really practical with the applications here. So like you said, if you're a Google, you're going to be on Gemini. Maybe you guys shouldn't be going off using ChatGPT. I'm asking the obvious question here. Break that down. Why? Why should we?
Yeah, absolutely. When you're the enterprise version, right, which is the Gemini or the Copilot, and you have the right license with Gemini with Microsoft and Google, it's an enterprise version. So you're kind of you're not feeding the large language model. When you use OpenAI, ChatGPT, and
that
other
learning
products,
button is on.
That learning button is on.
Yeah.
And whatever you put in that prompt is feeding the large language model. So it's scary to think about if a special education teacher is writing the present level of performance for an IEP, an individualized education plan, if they're putting in information about a student and, maybe they're just asking to refine the paragraph that they wrote or whatever, that information is now in the large language model. We don't want that.
Do you know what it was that triggered this for New York? Maybe it wasn't one thing, but maybe they're just the forerunner. But it happened in 2019.
Yeah.
Louise initiated this. New York is following through. You were the first one. People are going to follow. States are going to follow, and school districts are going to have to follow. Do you know what started it?
I think CISA saying that educational agencies were going to be part of critical infrastructure helped. So when we got Education Law 2D, it actually, we also have in the RIC, the Regional Information Centers, they have a policy team, right? So they basically took Education Law 2D, they created policy for districts, and they said, here, you're going to adopt this policy. In that policy, it literally says that we will try to be compliant to NIST 1.1, version 1.1. We've actually, by September, all school districts in New York State have to change that policy because now we are on NIST 2.0. And governance is the added feature in 2.0. And I couldn't be happier about that because what that really states is data privacy and security is no longer an IT thing. It is an organizational thing. When you have governance, that means everyone from your organization needs to come together and share decisions, start making decisions about this, and being responsible for it. So actually, the director of technology kind of wiped their brow a little bit and said, excellent. They're starting to support the ideas that I've been saying, I can't do this by myself, right? I think
this is good news for the tech director. But right now, when you talk about data and data privacy in a school district, where does everybody's head turn?
Yeah, IT.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah. And I think I've heard you talk about this before, but the tech director being in charge of that and that role being on the tech director, do you see any issues with that?
Yes, of course. We did talk about this. Yeah, It's a complete conflict because let's say we're talking about setting up a network, right? So there's a framework through CISA of setting up networks, segmenting networks, and
And the
things like
network
that.
is great.
Well, that's what I'm going to say. If I'm the DPO and the CTO or the director of technology, I set up the network. This thing looks, I nailed it, right? It looks
I
great.
audited it myself.
Yes, you audit yourself. And I'm so glad you used that word because a lot of times in my job, you had asked me like, what does a daily day look like for you? Auditing is a lot of it. Auditing our systems, our student information systems, auditing our finance systems, and just, looking for what data we're collecting, how we're transferring it, how safely we're transferring it, and things like that. I have to work with each department head to find out what data do they have, how are they storing it, how do they share it, and honestly, do they need it all? I talked about in my keynote the idea of going on a data diet and maybe talking about we hold a lot of information that maybe we hold it because that's the way it's always been done versus what is critical. What do we really need to have in these systems?
I loved what you said. You said minimalism is a strategy or something. How did you say
Yes, that's exactly it. Minimalism is a security strategy. It is, most definitely. If you don't have it on your network, if you don't keep it, if you don't carry it, then your cyber creeps can't get it, right? Yeah. So that's a minimalism. Great way to look at it.
You've talked about your role developing and that you're the first one. How do we avoid the thing that we do in education all the time of creating this specialized unfunded role that gets dumped on somebody else who has too many hats already and maybe doesn't get the attention that it needs?
Yeah, so let's talk about the first part of that, right? You said your role is kind of morphed a little bit. That's I think the term that I use, and it definitely has. When I was brought into Lakeshore, I was a data protection officer. I was getting agreements signed. I was, working on software lists and really trying to identify what it is that needs to be protected, where our data lies.
Now, just for clarity, let me interrupt for a second. How large is Lakeshore?
We probably have about under 2,000 students, just under 2,000
so we're not
students.
talking large New York City district.
Correct.
We're talking the average, normal. So more of these roles get joined together in that level.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. That's fine. I think
just to give some context.
Again, I can't. I get, when I go to districts, sometimes they'll say to me, there's no way my Board of Education is going to have an appetite to bring on another administrator, right? So that's the reality of our lives right now. School budgets aren't great, right? So, okay, that's fine, but I think the idea is maybe your director of technology can be a chairperson for your governance team, but what you need is a team of people taking care of this data privacy and security issue within your organization. Right. So, while they may chair that committee, you need people like your superintendent, your business officials, your department heads, building principals, understanding how it is that they are going to take charge of data privacy and security within their worlds, right? Their different units of the organization. So I would say, setting up a governance team is probably your best bet. Yeah. By far, and getting the buy-in and explaining to people why you need a governance team, what this whole data privacy and security world is about, and how critical it is for our students to be safe on the devices we give them in our network. So,
I hadn't mentioned this yet, but you are the co-author of From Chalk Dust to Digital Trust,
yes,
which is containing much of what we're talking about here.
Yes, very much.
Can you talk a little bit more about this book and how it came to be?
Yeah. And
the resource that it can be to tech directors?
Thank you. So from Chalk Dust to Digital Trust, let's start at the beginning. I guess it was back in maybe 2022. I met the co-author, Antoinette King. She's kind of from the city side of the state. She came to Erie to BOCES, where I have my school district, and she was talking to us about data privacy and security. Actually, she's the first person I ever saw run a tabletop activity where you're practicing and testing your incident response and your disaster recovery plans. And she kind of ran through a tabletop activity with us. And I just remember like really hard fangirling on this poor girl. And at the end of the session, she said, okay, and I have a book to give away. And I turned around and looked at the audience that was sitting with me and I said, everybody put your hand down. That book is mine. And I went and got her book. Her first book was Digital Citizen's Guide to Cybersecurity. And I actually was still in the role of going into classrooms and doing a lot with the librarians at that point that I had mentioned. I used her book to help me develop lesson plans. And so I reached out like any good fangirl would on LinkedIn. She friended me. Crazy that she did, but she did. And I said, hey, I just have this idea that like what you wrote in this book and how I feel about data privacy and security, I think it would be so cool if we got together and did it. And man, she matched my crazy real quick. And the next thing you knew, we were working on this book. And it really, when we set out to write this book, we really did want it to be a guide. I wanted somebody to be able to pick up the book and say, I have no idea what she's talking about when she talks about data privacy and security and governance, but I hope I'm going to read this book and figure it all out. Not only will you figure it out, but I'll give you the roadmap in how you work with people within your district to actually develop a governance team and develop the protocols and procedures around running a governance team and things like that. So the way the book is presented is, we'll present the idea at the beginning of the chapter of all the things you're going to get out of the chapter, right? So it's kind of like a, objective. Like if you're a teacher, you put the objectives on the board. That's what we did. Put the objectives on the board and said, in this chapter, you're going to learn A, B, and C. Then you read the chapter, and then at the end of the chapter, there's some questions that it's almost like a book study, right? You want to guide people through thoughts in their own educational agency about what they just read. Like, how do we match up to what Michelle and Antoinette have in this book, right? So that was the purpose. As I told you, I have the Western New York DPO Cooperative. I'm just working in my region in Western New York. And as I went throughout New York in different places, the Southern Tier, I did a conference. In New York City, I've done conferences. I just realized, I think more people need the information that I know. So that's how, that book got started. And I just think I hope it's the resource that people are looking for. We also provide tons of resources of where you can, like if you're looking for starting a governance team, some resources on NIST and things that you can look at. If I talk a lot about training in the book. If you're looking for resources for good training, I talk about that too. So yeah, our hope was that it was going to be a good starting point for people who have no idea how to begin with all this.
Yeah, I like the way in my mind, it gets you from 0 to 60 in the thinking and the conversations around it. But you can add your district's kind of individual needs. Yeah. Plus, as educators, don't we all just like to share and learn from each other and not all have to start with a blank piece of paper?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So. Yeah, for sure.
Tech directors don't want to come across as alarmists, but they're like, maybe we're not doing everything we should be doing on the data privacy end. Don't have the bandwidth, I mean, honestly, there's so many things that a tech director has to deal with. But if there's a conversation that they need to have with the superintendent about data privacy, where would you recommend they start with that?
Yeah, so thank you, because I know what you're leading me into, I think, is the safety committee team, I think is what. So that's a great point. I'm glad we're talking about this now because, you're not going to walk into a district and see that there's a governance team already established. That's just probably very far and few between where I've walked into a district and they already have a team established. Where I started when I got with Lakeshore Central Schools was the safety committee team, because these people are already thinking safety, and it's got the big hitters that you need on your governance team to be making decisions and supporting you. So in a safety committee team, you already have your superintendent, you have your business official, you have the directors of each department, you have building principals, we even have board members and teachers. So it's just a great place to start. So, don't come out of the gate thinking, okay, I got to put this governance team together. Ease into it. It's a marathon, not a sprint. I say that about everything when it comes to data privacy and security, because like you said, not everybody has the bandwidth to be dealing with their job as a director of technology and, a second job, the DPO. So, easing into that and infiltrating the safety committee team in your district is a great place to start. Then what you can do is kind of, get the buy-in from everybody there, and talk about how maybe you can spin off a subcommittee, and that's your data privacy and security governance team. So, highly recommend that route. And as far as the alarmist, you never want to do that. One of the things that we run is phishing campaigns, right? And I learned from a colleague of mine, she just put out a phishing email. Didn't tell anyone, didn't warn anyone, but then gave some pretty scathing response if you clicked on a link or opened an email or an attachment, and people were ticked. The union was not happy. The teachers union was not happy. Don't start with that. Yeah, no. What you do is you give the why, right? Like, hey, I'm not trying to trick you. I'm not trying to do this. This is the threat landscape. This is a reality. I showed them news headlines. I showed them what's going on in cybersecurity for K-12. It's pretty scary. Ransomware attacks and breaches. And so show your faculty and staff those things. Talk to them about, why you're going to practice and test them with phishing emails. It's just going to make them better. That's the purpose. We want to make sure that in a safe environment, if you did click the link, it's not going to open a virus. It's just going to go to, yikes, you did that. Your mistake, but no big deal. Let me give you this micro training. Again, don't give them a 45-minute video because that's just going to put them to sleep. Give them a little micro training to say, in this email, let's look at 5 different points of where you should have seen that maybe you should question this email and not click on the link or open the attachment. So really just lightening up a bit on that, and just doing a whole bunch of training around that and give the whys.
Lighten up, that's great. But also, I'm just going to ask you this. Can you talk about what a breach could mean? And because it's no longer, I hope we don't get attacked.
It's when,
doesn't matter how small you are. It's maybe they'll go after the big guys. Doesn't matter anymore. Everybody's going to have these bad actors knocking on your door, knocking on every side. Do you know about breaches?
I will tell you this. This is how I explain it to my faculty and staff, okay? So, like I said, if they have an email that's on our domain, they have to be trained. And one of the things that I say in our training is you don't want to be that weakest link, right? Because if you are, and if a bad actor gets into our network and ransoms information, this causes systems to go down, right? This causes time away from your students. And just let's take an example. The average, if a school is hit with a breach, the average time that they'll be down is about 2 weeks. So that learning loss, we know about learning loss now because of COVID. Even the littlest bit of time can cause learning loss, right? So we just don't want it. But what happens every 2 week cycle? You get paid. And I talked to the bus driver. I know you just don't think you have anything to do with data privacy and security, but my friend, if you are the weak link and you do click the link and you are the reason that the network is down and causes different systems to be down, I just understand
Payroll might be one of them.
That may mean that you're not getting that paycheck this week, right? Or what have you. But we kind of talk about that. Breach also, the word, we don't even say the word, okay? We like to use the term unauthorized release of information. It just sounds a little nicer and not so negative. Breach gets people in a panic, right? So we'll often use the term unauthorized access to information. But if it is a breach, it is a breach, right? You got to name what it is. So just the idea that someone, third-party vendor, let's say, has information that they're not supposed to have, that breaks trust. Governance is all about trust, and it breaks the trust. It breaks the parents' trust. It breaks the teachers to the
and that's
IT
longer
department.
than
And
2 weeks.
that is a very long-lasting effect.
Yes.
Yeah, and so you just really want to be cognizant. I talk about that with superintendents too. It's like, they'll say, well, we don't have the or Board of Education too. We don't have the appetite to bring on, another administrative position or bring on this role as a data protector. Yeah, let's talk about whether or not you can afford what happens if you don't.
Right.
You don't have someone in this role keeping an eye on things and doing what needs to be done in accordance to the law and regulations.
Yeah.
Our last podcast, we talked to a school district who actually did go through a ransomware attack, and it's devastating.
It is, yeah.
It's devastating. And actually, the story of how they got through it and rebuilt from that is beautiful, but it's also something like, I promise you,
You don't want to go through
nobody
it.
wants to go through.
Yeah. And that idea too, the resiliency, I talk about doing TTX, tabletop activities or exercises. One of the things that I really stress too is not just that, but actually testing your backups, because that's where you're going to really understand the resiliency of your systems and your backups. And so it's one thing to just run the backup and say, oh yeah, I got the information back. It's another thing to try to utilize that backup that you just ran to actually function, right? So that's really important that people go that next step and actually try to use the backup to function. And then obviously you'll see how resilient you are. It's always a good idea. I'm telling you, and I'm sure they probably explained a little bit of the stress around the situation, right?
goodness.
Like people are so stressed, and your superintendent's going to be on you like white on rice because they're going to say, when does everything get back online? When do I get my SIS back? When do I get my financial? If you haven't tested and then and looked at the resiliency, you're not going to know. You're not going to know. Maybe it could be 2 weeks. Maybe it could be, so testing really does give you an idea of how quickly you can get the stuff back up and running. And then you'll feel confident telling, your superintendent, hey, we just did a backup test on this a month and a half ago, and it took us about 2 weeks. So I think that's what we're looking at here.
Well, and
depending on the system.
And kids are coming to school tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah.
Regardless of what
Regardless of what happened,
because
yeah.
people have lives and kids need to learn whether we have technology or not.
Oh, amen.
So having that group understand the value of what you're bringing, but also that kids are coming to school either way.
Either way.
So what kind of environment are we providing for them?
So I will say this too, along with your incident response plan and your disaster recovery plan, you need a business continuity plan. And I think that's kind of a piece we just realized, we're kind of missing this from, by us, I mean the region that I work in. We were like, the importance of this business continuity plan, I think we underestimated it because, again, like you said, if this system isn't online for 2 weeks, kids will still be in the building.
Yes.
And how do we function with it? Building principals need to understand that. The teachers need to understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good
It's
point.
been a long time since we did school with paper and pencils, but
Well, we're in Tennessee. We can talk about that situation. There's parents out there, parents advocacy groups that are asking right now, what are we doing with these young guys? And do we really need, with our youngins, do we need technology in their hands? Right? Is this the best way to teach? And so tech directors are being called on, amongst all the other things that are going on, they're actually being called on to get into this conversation and be people who are providing solutions to those questions
that conversation as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
If you walked into 10 different schools in the Southeast and you'd say maybe 8 are not doing this thing that they need to be doing, what would you say? I mean, it's probably more than one thing, but where would you start?
Yeah, that's actually a great question because number one, I actually run a service out of my school district, so I am working with other districts in my region. And the first thing I do is kind of audit, where are you at? Where are you at? And sometimes that picture is not pretty, and that's okay. It's not to be judged. It's not anything. It's just where you are at this point. And I always say there's slow hanging fruit on that NIST core functions that you can probably shore up pretty quickly without a ton of money being needed, just by sharpening your policies, procedures, protocols, things like that. But I will say, I've already mentioned it, I think the starting point is a governance team, so that when you start to tackle the problems that emerge in data privacy and security, you're not a silo working by yourself. That you have the superintendent's ear, you have the business official's ear, you have these key players' ears, and you're working as a team, not just, like I said before, governance is on data privacy and security is not an IT thing, it's an organizational thing.
Pick up a little bit on the audit piece, because I think that's a crucial thing of districts identifying where they are. Like you said, where are you now? You may not be where you want to be.
Yeah.
None of us are.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is just collecting data that is documenting that you are or are not doing things, and then learning from that and growing into doing the pieces.
Yeah. So I'll tell you this, right? It's cheapest and easiest to audit yourself. But is that the best case scenario, right? We have partners in the federal government that are willing to help. I have reached out to CISA. I have reached out to the Department of Homeland Security. And actually, just at the end of May, I had the Department of Homeland Security for our region come to our district and perform a rapid assessment. And super helpful, right? Because again, when you audit yourself, you're a little more kind than you should be.
Nobody wants to be a 1.
Yeah, nobody wants to be a 1. Everyone wants to be the 4. So just partnering with who is already in your region to give you a fair assessment and a quick assessment of your environment was just priceless. It was really priceless. And it was relatively harmless. They spent 2 days. I'll just walk you through it. We had 2 gentlemen come to our district. The first day they were there, it was a full day interview. They were asking us questions, asking us to see documentation, see different things, right? And kind of run through a lot of similarities between what was in NIST and maybe the CPGs of Common Performance Goals for CPGs with CISA. And so we ran through that. And then the next day they come back because they spend the morning with you into the afternoon. Late afternoon, they kind of put everything together. And in the morning, you get back together and you kind of go over what they've found. And it's not all weaknesses. They definitely start with the strengths. Like, man, we really are impressed with your incident response plan. We like how you have, outside contacts outside of your organization. Your insurance policy is in your incident response plan, so you don't act outside of that. That's super important. I do make that recommendation a lot to districts is with your incident response plan, keep your cyber insurance plan and actually have a standalone cyber insurance plan. Can't tell you how many districts I've walked into and they're like, yeah, we don't have a standalone. We just have, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, you should look into a standalone policy. So yeah, I think that's the case there. So
I think all these recommendations are very strong encouragements to everybody that's watching this, and can really provoke thought into what am I doing, where are my gaps?
Yeah.
And then coming together with someone like yourself or someone in another district that can help you fill those gaps doesn't make you feel like you're on an island and you're alone and I'm never going to jump over this hurdle, but we can all do it together.
Yeah, for sure. We had, like I said, I put together the Western New York DPO Cooperative for that exact reason, to let people know, like, you're not alone in trying to get this crazy work done. You have other people that are doing it too. And Tennessee, New York, and Florida have a nice cooperative that they're building right now. And I think that can only benefit us to be a part of that alliance.
Goes back to, you answered my other question of the first thing that they need to do is get a team. don't do it by yourself.
Yeah.
Get a team with you.
Yeah.
So you were a tech director. What is, if you just one thing that you wish you would have known when you first started as a tech director that you know now? What would you have told yourself in year one as a tech director?
I think I kind of hit on it already. Don't be that department of no. Be the department of yes, but. And that but is just making sure that, you're working with vendors who are partners to you, not going to be adversarial partners to you by not having good data privacy plans or good policies around privacy. Yeah.
Well, Michelle, I'm going to put a link to this in the show notes because I think it is an incredible place to start. Anyone who's in the K-12 world, I think, is interested in children and their safety.
Yes.
And part of their safety is their data safety and protecting that. And so thank you so much for sitting with us and sharing your expertise, sharing this resource. Again, I'll link it in the show notes.
I love it.
So thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you.